Welcome, everyone. As I said, my name is Dave Hegebarth, and we're going to get started with today's webinar. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about how Pliant has helped WhyFly, an internet service provider, deliver better service, I think faster. And joining me is Nick Sabine. And Nick is the CRO and CMO of WhyFly, and he's going to have a few comments on how Pliant has helped the business. But first, I'd like to go through and sort of iterate how Pliant works, what we do, what we're about. And then, as I said, Nick's going to take you through the benefits that WhyFly has seen from the low-code, no-code automation Pliant provides. So Pliant is a low-code, no-code automation platform. We utilize APIs, command line, web interfaces to automate the connection of different manufacturers. In the graphic here, you'll see some of the things that we've tied together, from infrastructure components to ITSM and applications to cloud-based providers. Pliant provides a low-code way of generating automation, saving you hours in terms of coding and allowing you to do cross-domain automations. And you're going to see a bit of that in the WhyFly story here. The secret sauce behind Pliant is really this. Pliant takes manufacturers' APIs, whether it's applications such as HubSpot and UCRM from Ubiquity that we're going to talk about today, from manufacturers like F5 and Cisco and others. Pliant is out grabbing the APIs and turning them into what we call action blocks. On the left of this slide, you see the code that you would need to write to actually add, in this case, a server to a pool in an F5 box. Really, the function's not important. It's just that you can see on the left, you would be writing a lot of lines of code. That code starts with a username and password. And we don't really want to be hard coding that in our scripts. It's a security issue from just a transparency issue. It's also an issue when you change the username and password, you got to go back and rewrite your scripts, things like that. So we don't want to be doing that. In Pliant, in the action block on the right, we use authentication tags. The authentication has been stored in our vault, and then I am told as a script builder, hey, go ahead and use this particular tag to do your authentication. Now we're securely not handing out usernames and passwords, but allowing people to continue to build out scripts and automation. Another value is each of these blocks on the right contains all of the debug functions that you would see on the left. A lot of times when we're in a hurry to build automation, we'll write enough lines of code to actually perform the task, but we won't actually include the lines of debug until something goes horribly wrong. And then we're backtracking in the heat of the moment, having to do a lot of work we weren't planning on. Pliant bakes into every API call the ability to do that debug. So you don't have to write a line of code either for the task or for the debug. It's all baked into the block. And then lastly, Pliant allows you to understand a manufacturer's API through a number of different ways. We have question marks you can hover on to give you information. When you'll see me in the demo, when I click in the object field, any and all of the parameters are actually iterated for you. So you don't have to go do internet research. You don't have to be using Google to figure out what are all the possible combinations that this API command could give you. They're all inside Pliant, inside that action block. So we're out driving automation through drag and drop blocks instead of code to build out different automations. And today we're going to talk a little bit about our interaction with WhyFly. There are a couple applications that they use to onboard and track the performance and health of customers. HubSpot, and Nick will talk about this, is the CRM. That's where people are going to first land. Their information is going to be put in there. They're going to get provisioned, and we have some automation to do that. And their health is going to be tracked in the Ubiquity networks, either in the CRM platform or the NMS platform. And before Pliant, as I think Nick will tell the story, this was all by hand. I put your name in, I put your address in, I put your radio ID in, and things like that. With Pliant, we have the ability we have built blocks for HubSpot, and I'll show you those in the demo. And we've built blocks for Ubiquity, UCRM, and I'll show you those in the demo as well. But dragging and dropping blocks, we've been able to automate that process. So what I'd like to do is turn it over to Nick to talk a little bit about WhyFly's business, and then how Pliant actually the Pliant automation actually helps them get some efficiency. So Nick, I'll hand it over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Dave. I appreciate you guys inviting me to join on this, and happy to speak about all the great work we've done together and making, especially my life, a lot easier. So WhyFly, we deliver our internet service with a combination of fiber and managed air fiber. We have fiber running in tall buildings and towers throughout the city. And on top of those tall buildings and towers, we have radios distributing our signal to rooftops, whether it's residential homes or commercial businesses, anywhere from the small mom and pop to large arenas like the 76ers field house here in Wilmington, Delaware. So part of that is launching a internet service provider, which is there's just the big guys. In our coverage area, it's Comcast. So we're going up head to head with one of the largest companies in the country, and from a telecom perspective. Now, so there's no software out of the box to be able to do this at scale, right? There's around 2,000 plus companies that use the type of technology and deliver the way we do, but they're mostly in rural areas. Very few are folks on the dense city type environments. That being said, there hasn't been a lot of case studies on the best way or technologies or software solutions to be able to address the way we want to service our customers. So, with upwards of 3,000 plus customers residential and over 400 some businesses in town here, and later this year launching a few other markets. We deliver a low cost, low risk option to the big service providers. No contracts, no hidden fees, and to do that, it's really important to keep costs down, right, for us. So part of our scalability is to be able to deliver this high touch experience, and to do so, we need to be able to communicate effectively, and in some cases over communicate service issues, once they're on board, as well as onboarding folks seamlessly as possible. And until then, with the radio coverage, that some of these radios provide, one radio will be able to deliver coverage for approximately a few hundred households, and with upwards of 1,000 radios on roofs right now, covering majority of about 30,000 households. Keeping track of what houses are connected and what businesses are connected to what radios, and and be able to service those customers and be able to make sure that they are in coverage area, because we do need line of sight with our technology. So a big part of our onboarding process prior to Pliant was your customer calls up, they go to the website as anyone else would, and put their information in, and it's largely manual as we're checking those addresses, reviewing the line of sight with Google Earth, be able to see if I can actually see that rooftop from one of our distribution points throughout the city. And that was, very highly, as mentioned, manual process. So, after we check the address and verify, we're still not 100% sure that we will be able to get on that roof and deliver service until we actually schedule. And what we're doing there, as a new company, a few years back, we were trying to reduce the amount of hurdles, for someone to sign up and be on board. So we weren't taking payments up front, we weren't taking cards, and we were just getting out there and getting on those roofs and trying to connect as many customers as possible, and just getting those numbers up and proving that model out. Now, it was very successful in our growth. We also did refer a friend, you both get a free month. So we grew. Our exponential growth was pretty strong. But what we ended up having is this large data issue. So part of it was being able to collect all the data points we needed to be able to serve a customer properly, and we were asking some folks on the phone to be able to manually check a lot of data points when onboarding, and then also copying those data points from first name, last name, email address, phone number, whatnot, and then also some of the information from service perspective and device perspective. We were having to copy that information by hand to 3 to 4 different systems. The communication CRM, to the subscription management CRM, to the actual billing platform, to the actual to also the radio and device management and monitoring system. So it's to onboard somebody. I think it started off being about 20-minute process. And then having to also follow up, making sure that after that install, all the data is put in right. What radio they're connecting to, what frequency they're on. The list goes on and on about the data points that we had to verify. And And when you're trying to find folks, at scale to be able to do this job and keep that price point low, you're finding folks that aren't too interested in it. It's just not their own, to defend them a bit. It was a lot. It was a lot to take on, and to be able to manage. So you can imagine that there's a lot of holes in our data. Part of that was just going through and manually correcting those. And obviously seeing that this isn't scalable, as we're looking to launch in 20 some markets in the next few years, and keep our price point down, and find as few people to be able to handle the inbounds as possible, but still keep that high customer touch. We really needed to find a solution. So we started looking first at out-of-the-box solutions, which so we didn't have a lot of resources for development, and finding larger solutions. And there's nothing out of the box for this. I mean, Comcast built their own. There's the Googles of the world who have built theirs for their wired internet service, as well as Verizon. But we don't have the resources they have. So we were looking at some out of the box solutions that we could stitch together. But the problem we were facing is that we were starting to look at ways to change our business model to fit the software, which really was going against our core beliefs and our core values and the way we want to deliver service. That being said, we started looking at developers, the traditional developer route, either putting it overseas or find something locally. Locally, it's it's very expensive. Overseas, you get some discounted opportunities there, but everybody's used to the similar type of hurdles that you're dealing with, is being overly detailed in exactly what you want, and making sure that you're actually spending more time on communicating each individual feature, and you want to just not be able to communicate the things that we needed, and having somebody see our vision and help grow with us and help figure out the problem as we go. So the softwares we're using at the core is HubSpot to be able to communicate effectively with our customers and manage those communications, and be able to basically have those customers get responses and get communications as fast as possible, to also onboard and really be able to deliver the price point and make sure that they're opening things, and they're engaging with the account and the service. There's UCRM is the relationship and subscription management software that we use from Ubiquity, which was is pretty much always in beta, and their support isn't the best. I mean, other than being able to chat with them in the community blog, you're not really getting a lot of you're not getting any phone support, and the documentation was very vague at best. So that being said, with the limited resources, it was very hard to stitch those two systems that would have never been stitched together or integrated together before. And then some of the other softwares that Ubiquity offered, as well as Stripe, to be able to manage subscriptions in the way that we do it. And simple pricing. As simple as our pricing was, it was very difficult to be able to display specific pricing based off of your location and address. And then having to look at other solutions, like validating those addresses. So with all that being said, there's a lot of time taken, and we were looking and redoing our forecasting to hire more and more bodies to be able to manage those inbounds, right? So you had your sales inbounds to be able to check and verify addresses, and then you had support inbounds that you had to make sure that you're going to several different systems to be able to find the data you needed to support that customer. So a 3-minute call ended up being a 5, 10, 20-minute call, just to be able to get all the information you needed to be able to tell that customer that their toaster's not plugged into their router. That being said, we were looking for solutions, and via some relationships, we ran into Pliant, and they were able to not only understand what the solutions were that we were using, but how they need to work together, and also find and articulate different ways that we could execute our same vision without with basically limiting the amount of things that we needed to integrate, removing systems out of there, and just creating efficiencies from the time that the customer signs up to one click, changing that person to saying they're verified, changing them to a customer, all the way down to provisioning the devices for the roof and the equipment within the home or within the business. And as we launch these next stages of our work together, I'm really excited, and the team has been very excited to see their workloads reduce, and the stress levels of being able to scale their positions and their tasks within the company. So we're very excited to bring this to the next market, and so on. So
great, thanks. And I threw up on the screen here a slide you and I had put together almost initially, right? Some of the first tasks that we took over, which was onboarding a customer, and you mentioned about all the things that needed to be filled out. The ability to reconcile between systems. So late payment, something we all do in business, but very difficult when they're spread across multiple sets of data sets. And so bringing those together, you mentioned equipment provisioning and also multiple IT systems just synchronized. And I want to reiterate that that really all starts with our ability to import vendors. And HubSpot was one of those, UCRM, another that we basically took the APIs that they had and made these action blocks, which I'm actually going to show you in a demo right now. All right. So here we are at the dashboard for Pliant. Sorry about that. In this screen, basically, this is the home dashboard for Pliant. We can see how many flows or work things we've done in a 24-hour period, how many in the last 5 minutes, things that passed or ran successfully, and things that failed. We can also see within any execution, the output of that execution. So we send these to logs, which probably get formatted to, in a lot of cases, to governance systems that hold them, but we want to make sure that we're recording the work we did. So we record who ran it, when it started, when it finished, the URI in our product, if we want to get back to that exact workflow, a UUID so we can index it, and then the results of the actual job. And it's good for me to point out here because it's just easiest that the result of this particular API call initially is a text, just a long string of text. If you do any sort of development, you realize that very hard to work with text. I can't evaluate how many CPUs a system has if its CPU is 2, all in quotes. It's not an object, it's just a blob of text. So Pliant does a really good job of taking outputs and translating them into other outputs, including objects. So here we have the top is the result of what would come back from an API call. The bottom half of this is the redo we did, or the data translation, where we actually break each of the pieces into their own objects. So now you can CPU cores equals 2. I have a very easy way to programmatically then go evaluate how many cores there happen to be. Whatever the data coming in is, it's very difficult to work with it when it's string-based, so we do a lot of data manipulation while we're doing this low-code, no-code programming. So I thought I'd show you a little bit about what low code looks like in Pliant. I'm going to come in and just very quickly make a workflow for you and show you how easy that is. If I was dealing with HubSpot and UCRM, doesn't matter what I call it, I'm just naming this. I can do that in this palette that we have. This is the low code, no code sort of landscape. In any sort of programming, you probably want some variables. So we have to know a little bit about programming, hence we call it low code. But I can add variables very easy by just using the UI. So maybe here I want something like HubSpot contact. I don't know. We'll just put it in there for now. And maybe we'll take a look at some UCR data, UCRM data. So I'll call UCRM contact as well. Don't know where I'm going with this exactly, but I have an idea. So I'm going to have some variables because I want to be able to show you something when the run is done. I've checked them as output. Now let's go work with our vendors a little bit. So we have HubSpot as a vendor or an application that we can work with. And Pliant has taken the HubSpot APIs and turned them into action blocks. So we can see we have a folder here called contacts, and inside contacts are all the different API calls that are sort of batched together in that folder around contacts. And so we can see here, if we hover over the question mark, we get more information about how we might use any one of these blocks. And if I just do get contact by email, I can drag this over here. Now I talked a little bit about authentication, and here are those authentication tags that I have to work with. And then there are fields that have more information about the product. So what do I want? So I put the contact to the email here. I can throw in a property, and it's hard to read, but there's a whole bunch about what I might want to do with property. Let's just say that I might want to check for myself. Now there's a lot of different things that go on when you're doing programming, and I'm making this very simple. But my point is to show you a little bit about how the tool works, less than the programming around it. Blocks can be named, so I could say, although this block's pretty aptly named, get contact. Or workflows can actually be documented, like when any you were doing in programming, you could put here, get a contact by email. This is so somebody coming behind me understands what I was trying to do. Now, if I want to see the output of this block, I need one more block. I need what we call a common block. These are all the things you would do when you were programming. So these are your arrays, your date times, the things that you might need to do in the logic that you're looking at. So I'm going to drag over what we call an assign block. And that basically is going to help me take my variable and populate it with the output from the get contact by email block. We have type ahead, so I can just do this. And I'm going to say, let's see, this is the HubSpot contact data. And what do I want to populate that with? Well, I really want to populate that with the output of the block before it. So get contact, and then I can type dot result. Now, if I go and run this, we should get the output from HubSpot for a person that has my email address, dave@pliant.io. And here we go. So we've returned a whole lot of data about me from HubSpot. And I didn't have to write a line of code. A UI, I just put the variables in there. I drug over a block and the results right there. If I was going to evaluate any one of these things, maybe I'm looking for a particular value, like, I don't know, what state I live in, or first name or last name. There's a lot of information in here, or maybe my address, whatever it might be. Let's see. So maybe we have, do we have name in here? First name. So we can even dig into the data. So maybe it's, and then I type, and I get a type ahead. So I can say, well, I want to do result.properties.first name. So Pliant really helps you get to the information that you want. If I rerun this, we'll see a lesser set of information. Pretty much it'll be my first name. So there we go. The value's Dave. So now I have a way to evaluate. You know, my next loop could be, is this Dave? If it's Dave, do this. If it's not Dave, do something different. We make it very easy to get data without writing lines of code and to process that data without writing lines of code. If I take you over to the production system over here a little bit, I typed the password right? I did. Without walking through the flows, I'll at least show you a little bit. So these are some of the jobs we're running. And this is the create job client. So basically when Nick gets an inbound, we're able to go ahead and push that data then into UCRM and some of the other tools, and the output will look a lot like this. We track when we ran it. He can add up, make sure that it actually is there. We can do some checking around these log messages, but we have a lot of different ways to work with data without having to write code. It's a low-code solution where you saw me drag and drop the blocks. So very quickly able to tie together vendors like Ubiquity and HubSpot. We do Cisco and F5. We do applications like Azure and AWS. There are many different ways to actually take a look at data without having to write a single line of code using Pliant. So I'm going to swap back over to my slide, and maybe Chris has found a set of questions. I'm not sure, but I'll kind of throw that over to you.
There might be some more, Dave, that come in as you start answering these, but
right.
We have two questions that came in. We have 4 minutes left. So one's for Nick. I guess we'll put you on the hot seat first, Nick. You had mentioned some of the kind of different technologies that you were considering and maybe outsourcing or hiring a developer. Like, how did you ultimately get to your choice of going with Pliant?
Well, just having experience integrating systems in the past and working with outside developers, I was really looking for a solution that that I wasn't, beholden to a specific developer or a line of code that was typed, that was created, once, prior to, or I wanted the integrations to survive people, right? So one thing I liked about Pliant is that, I don't have to have, rely on, specific developer or team of developers, tagging code in a certain way, right? Or finding a new team to come in and, articulate what that previous team, looked at and did. It's more systematic, and it's more organized. And from that perspective, I feel like it's more agnostic to any other systems as they may come available, that I can swap out to help our business out. So I'm not stuck with HubSpot. I'm not stuck with UCRM. I'm not stuck with Stripe. As those things evolve, as technology evolves, I can swap those out quickly with Pliant having all those integrations, all those functionalities that I require, already indexed and built within the system. So
awesome. And I think that should answer
that and Dave,
yeah.
by the way.
Yeah. And that kind of dovetails into
Dave makes me feel safe.
Yeah. Good.
Makes my investment feel safe. Yeah.
Good. No gluten for Dave. And
shenanigans for sure, but
and Dave, it dovetails pretty nicely when he mentioned Nick had mentioned different integrations, different technologies provided. Somebody had just asked, like, what if you don't have a technology that we use?
That's a great question. So with Nick's subscription, with anyone's subscription, we give you a 15 business day SLA around getting that manufacturer in. So long as it's a publicly available API, something we can get our hands on, or you can help us get our hands on, we can take the API, turn it into the action blocks you need. The nice thing is that Pliant is built as a microservices architecture. We're delivered either on-prem or out of the cloud. And integrations updates don't interfere with code updates for the rest of the core product, if you will. So those will become available as soon as we're done. They become available on our website, and you can go to the support site and download them via the UI, and you have a whole new set of blocks to begin building automation very quickly with.
We appreciate you taking the time, Nick. I know that you're a busy guy, and you guys are continuing to grow like crazy, and it's been great to see the evolution of how this partnership is transformed. And I know that we all value everything that WhyFly has done to help us grow as a company, and vice versa. I'm looking forward to seeing how this continues to evolve.
Likewise. I mean, it's awesome. I don't think we could have done it as efficiently and as and kept my sanity at the same time. So thank you for that.
And Dave, any kind of closing comments?
No, I'd just like to thank everybody who's taking the time to join us today, and hopefully those who will watch this in the days to come. There's some resources on the screen. You can find more information at our website at pliant.io. There's a ton of videos either in the resource library. You can find us on YouTube at the Pliant YouTube channel as well. So once again, thank you to Nick. Thank you, Chris. And thank you to everyone who's watched today. Hope everybody has a great day. Thanks.